Yeah, that's exceptionally interesting, and that's one of the things that the lawsuit. And I don't know, are you guys involved also with the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry? Are you guys working together? Because I think they're also suing the FBI, aren't they?
Yeah, we're both co-plaintiffs on that, along with family members of the victims of 9/11. So this will indeed make public the evidence that the FBI has of ours. In fact, and what they have is the original documentary that we made that was back in what was it 2009 or 10. They actually responded to the person who sent this to them, and they said, this is very interesting, seems backed by thorough research and analysis. So they've got themselves in a corner. They obviously had it in order to respond to it like that. They evaluated it in that response. And this is exactly what what Congress has required of them in 2015, which they did not provide, the evaluation of all the evidence that they have received since the original 9/11 Commission report came out. And so also what they had was the 25-page peer-reviewed paper that in the Bentham Open Chemical Physics Journal that proved that there were incendiaries that were found in all the World Trade Center dust samples that were tested by this team of 8 international scientists led by Niels Harrit in Copenhagen. What did they find? They found incendiaries, these red-gray chips, red on one side, gray on the other. Well, the red side is iron oxide and aluminum powder, the ingredients of thermite, set in a bed of oxygen, silica, and carbon, which is organic material, which means that this is incendiary material that's been engineered to become more explosive. So we have very, very strong proof of what brought the towers down, not just in this paper, but throughout the body of forensic evidence, which we've highlighted in YouTube. And so this is damning evidence that once the FBI releases to Congress as they will be forced to through this lawsuit. So what we've done now in concert with the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry is to package this evidence along with the Alaska study, which we spent 4 years, $300,000 of hundreds of supporters of AE 9/11 Truth, funding the finite element analysis put forth by Professor Leroy Halsey and his team of PhD researchers, which we talked about the last time that you and I interviewed. This has now been released. The final report is out there now. And we're we've already sent 50 of them to key engineers around the country. We'll be sending 400 of these packages to universities and key engineering associations and architectural associations, basically demanding that they look at it. This is extremely important. What it does is pull the rug out from underneath NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who was tasked by Congress to explain these collapses, all 3 of them, to the American people. And regarding the third collapse, it basically says, no way could NIST's theory of destruction by fire have brought this building down. Not one of the 12 or 14 steps that NIST describes in its collapse initiation theory could even have happened, much less all of them.
Right.
And what they concluded was that this building had to have been taken down by the simultaneous removal of all the columns in the building, starting with the interior columns, and then within a second or so, the exterior columns. Now, what can do that? There's nothing.
Are you there?
Right?
Oh, sorry. I thought I lost you. Were you waiting
that
for me to
was
answer? Because I'm going to say thermite. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, there's nothing except thermite or explosives that can remove all the columns at once. And all the columns have to be removed at once in order to bring this building down simultaneously, all 4 sides symmetrically at free fall acceleration. So this has been proven academically now in this 4-year study. So what we've done now is taken that report and we've packaged it inside a request for correction is the formal term. Under the Data Quality Act, we can actually force agencies like NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, to explain errors, we'll call them politely. It's basically fraud on the American people. This request for correction includes that report, and it highlights 8 key problems with the NIST report, including components of their collapse initiation theory. For instance, the column 79 side plate, which would have trapped the girder from traveling off of the support on column 79, the web stiffeners, which would have had supported the flanges and would have had to have forced NIST to conclude that the girder would have had to have moved 12 or more inches off of its seat on that plate. It includes the cascade of floor failures, which would have been impossible, that NIST claims was the case, and their entire global collapse analysis, their actual, they call it a progressive collapse. It would have, that each sequence would have caused the next thing to happen in what's called a progressive collapse, and none of those things could have happened. It includes the seismic data, which we can go into detail about, that proves that the explosions occurred prior to the building coming down. NIST tries to show that the seismic data is the building actually coming down and hitting the ground inside the building, which is ludicrous for a number of reasons. We also include the eyewitnesses and audio evidence of explosions, which are massive. And then the eroded steel from Building 7, which FEMA documented in a metallurgical examination, which they say the ends of the beams were partly evaporated, says one of the authors of the FEMA NIST report. Hot sulfur corrosion attack on the steel, says the team that did this report, and hot liquid molten iron. Office fires, which Building 7 is said to have come down by because it wasn't hit by a plane, right? We don't have jet fuel in Building 7. So office fires can't possibly, is what we have left, they can't possibly produce the temperatures associated with the melting of steel or iron, and yet there's abundant evidence of this not only in Building 7, but throughout the World Trade Center. So this is the essence of the request for correction. That's 100 pages that NIST now has about 2 months left to respond to. So we're looking forward to that response, and I'm sure it will be another null response on their part.
What can they say to kind of avoid responding? Can they do sometimes when you file a FOIA request, they come back and say, oh, well, we can't because of this exception or that exception. What do you think that they're going to do to avoid addressing it?
Yeah, they're going to say that we stand by our earlier report, and they'll probably throw in some other BS that will not make sense to anybody who's been really looking at this evidence, and that's the way it goes, and that's why we're getting prepared to sue them in advance.